not from some wild-eyed lunatic. They want it from a reliable source, and rightfully so. To demonstrate this proof, we first need to understand how astronomers actually discovered the outer planets in our solar system. The search for Planet X actually began when early astronomers first observed perturbations in the orbit of Saturn. Through mathematics, they predicted the existence of Saturn's perturber. William Herschel, a German-born British astronomer, then used this mathematical prediction to discover the planet Uranus in 1781. Interestingly enough, astronomers soon found perturbations in the orbit of Uranus as well. Based on the perturbations observed in the orbit of Uranus, a brilliant young 19th century British mathematician and astronomer by the name of John Couch Adams mathematically predicted the existence and position of a massive object in the outer solar system, one he believed was large enough to be Uranus's perturber. Then, German astronomer John Gall used Adams' mathematical prediction to discover the planet Neptune in 1846, and as with Uranus, astronomers would then find perturbations in the orbit of Neptune as well. Consequently, the search for Planet X was far from over. When Clyde Tombaugh discovered the planet Pluto in 1930, many jumped to the conclusion that it was the mysterious Planet X that everyone had been looking for so long. However, when the mathematicians began running the numbers, it became quickly obvious that Pluto had nowhere near the mass to be Neptune's perturber. When you compare Pluto with the Earth, the math becomes self-evident. Here you see Pluto and the Earth. Pluto seems tiny because it is tiny. In fact, it's roughly 60% the size of our own moon. This is why Pluto was recently demoted to the status of a dwarf planet. Oh well, fame is fleeting, so let's refocus our attention on the critical point, which is the ongoing search for this elusive Planet X. In the spirit of Herschel, Adams, Gall, and Tombaugh, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, continued the search for Planet X, and in 1992 they issued a landmark press release. It said, "Unexplained deviations in the orbits of Uranus and Neptune point to a large outer solar system body of 4 to 8 Earth masses on a highly tilted orbit beyond 7 billion miles from the Sun." After this announcement, the whole topic of Planet X mysteriously disappeared from the media spotlight. And this takes us back to the 1984 U.S. News article stating that NASA's Infrared Astronomical Satellite, IRAS, detected an object of intense speculation in 1983. Could this be the same object they reported in 1992 as being 7 billion miles from the Sun and as massive as 8 Earths? Given NASA's silence on the matter, who is to say? But then again, this silence does beg the question, what did they see and what did it look like? Perhaps a good guess starts with the IRAS itself. When we use amateur telescopes and binoculars in our backyards to view the heavens, we're looking at the skies in the visible light spectrums. However, as the name implies, the Infrared Astronomical Satellite, or IRAS for short, was used to view the heavens in the infrared spectrum. Our military and paramilitary forces use infrared devices for surveillance and to target the bad guys at night. This is because infrared devices show us the heat signatures of objects, such as the engine in this jet fighter. Likewise, astronomers use infrared telescopes to penetrate the dusty regions of space where it is difficult for us to observe cool, distant objects. With this in mind, let's assume that IRAS imaged Planet X in 1983. If so, what might it have looked like? Assuming it was spotted, it may have appeared like this, a faint reddish object. So what could that be? In 1984, astronomers felt it could be one of two things: a massive protoplanet forming at the edge of our solar system, or a brown dwarf companion to our own Sun. While a protoplanet would obviously lack the mass to perturb the orbits of Uranus and Neptune, a brown dwarf certainly would. So then what is a brown dwarf? In simple terms, a brown dwarf is an unborn star, and astronomers have recently learned that these unborn stars are the most common type in our galaxy. Unlike our Sun, which has the necessary mass to keep its own nuclear furnace burning, brown dwarfs lack the mass needed to stay lit. Consequently, they ignite much like our own Sun did, then sputter out and slowly die like the hot embers of a campfire. This is one reason why brown dwarfs are difficult to view in the visible light spectrums, because they're shrouded by a large ball of dust created by their initial ignition. However, a brown dwarf would stand out to the IRAS like a sore thumb due to its heat bloom. That's why infrared telescopes are ideal Planet X trackers at this time. So assuming that Planet X is a brown dwarf, how big could it be? The prevailing thought on brown dwarfs is that they must be bigger than the planet Jupiter, although astronomers have recently discovered a gas giant in another solar system that is substantially larger than Jupiter. Nonetheless, the assumption here is that if Jupiter were any larger, it could ignite and become a sun. An idea that was brilliantly examined in the film 2010, The Year We Make Contact, starring Roy Schneider, John Lithgow, and Helen Mirren. Released in 1984, it was the long-awaited sequel to Stanley Kubrick's 1968 blockbuster 2001: A Space Odyssey. What's interesting to note about the movie 2010 is the closing scene. In that scene, we see two suns in the sky. Assuming that Planet X is a brown dwarf, is it possible that reality could mimic fiction, and that we actually see two suns in the next 5 years? Yes, we could, if Planet X actually enters the core of our solar system. If you're sensing that the other shoe is about to fall, your instincts are spot on. According to a story titled Planet X, Is It Really Out There?, published in the September 10, 1984 issue of U.S. News and World Report, in 1983, the infrared astronomical satellite IRAS detected heat from an object about 50 billion miles away. Then in 1992, NASA issued a press release in which they state that they found an object of 4 to 8 Earth masses on a highly tilted orbit beyond 7 billion miles from the Sun. If this indeed is the very same object, the numbers say it all. This monster is headed our way. That is, assuming this object is in a long elliptical orbit around our own Sun. That brings us to the crux of the matter, and with this in mind, let's assume the following 3 things. 1. Planet X is an old unborn companion to our own Sun. 2. It is in a long elliptical orbit around our Sun. And 3. It is returning to pass through the core of our solar system, which explains our recent solar violence, global warming, and ongoing Earth changes. Assuming all of this is true, it stands to reason that there would be documented history of a previous Planet X flyby. Yes, there is. A popular term in the public lexicon these days is sundogs, and this started back in 2003 when paid disinformationalists learned that the poor resolution and imaging systems of these early camera cell phones could be used to create bogus sundog images. They then used social programming to make the term sundog a trigger word, so that when folks hear it, their brains stop working. This social programming campaign ended after Apple brought out the first iPhone in 2007, due to the superior imaging capabilities of modern smartphones. However, the social programming trigger was already well entrenched by that time. So with that in mind, let's compare actual sundogs with actual images from Turrialba. Here you see an actual sundog to the left, and to the right, images from 3 different surveillance camera systems at Turrialba. Sundogs are natural observations, which means you can see what your camera sees. As you look at this series of sundog images, compare them with the Turrialba images, and you'll see no evidence of sundogs. However, this fact has never stopped debunkers and paid disinformationalists from using this powerful social programming trigger phrase. Still the same, you can see the difference with your own eyes. Another popular natural observation debunking claim is, it's Venus. Here you see a recent observation of the planet Venus. Venus is used as the most frequent debunking tactic to rationalize away the object we're observing at 𝗬𝗟𝗪, which happens to be Nibiru. This feed capture from January of this year is from the third camera system installed at 𝗬𝗟𝗪. Here you see Nibiru. But is it Venus or is it Nibiru? If you're a debunker or a paid disinformationalist, we already know what your answer will be. However, for you good cynics out there, here is all the information you need to vet our observation. To the left, you see the time zone, elevation, and coordinates. And in the upper left-hand corner of every image displayed on the 𝗬𝗟𝗪 feed is a date and time stamp. Now, always remember, you're looking out to the west. So, to vet this observation, enter the data into a sky program such as Stellarium, and here is what you'll see. That Venus is not in the field of view. And in fact, you can perform this same test with every 𝗬𝗟𝗪 feed image of Nibiru we've ever posted. So if we're mistaking Nibiru for Venus, our own government, let alone any honest fifth grader, could have easily debunked us. But that is not how our government responded. On June 8, 2014, we released our video Planet X 101, Nibiru Nearing. And on June 12th, the United States government responded. They had the camera at 𝗬𝗟𝗪 pointed downward at the ground so that we could no longer use the feed to observe Nibiru. This is not truth, folks. It's just simple, heavy-handed suppression. If you want to understand the full scope of this deception and why these disinformation tactics are being employed, please read our article, It's Time to Look Up, at yowza.com, YOWUSA.com. With that in mind, let's move on to the next debunking category, camera aberrations. Camera aberrations are what the term implies, and unlike natural observations, these are image anomalies created by your camera. At the beginning of this program, we mentioned the three camera aberrations debunkers and paid disinformationalists use to dismiss our Nibiru observations. It's a reflection caused by a camera lens coating. It's a lens flare caused by an internal reflection. And it's light bouncing off the front of the lens and onto the backside of the camera housing window. Since this is the most creative of the lot, let's start with that by taking a quick look at the relevant outdoor surveillance camera components. Here is an example of a typical outdoor surveillance camera and its weatherproof housing. So let's strip it down to its bare components to see what's relevant. Here we begin with the camera body, to which we now add a lens. Unlike film cameras, digital cameras use an imaging sensor located just behind the lens mount to capture the image. So now that we have a complete camera, we need to protect it from the elements. That starts with a sealed weatherproof housing. And in front of this housing is a window for the camera lens. Now here is a key concept. No matter what kind of camera aberration we're talking about, It's going to happen within a few inches of the imaging sensor. Anything beyond the camera housing window will be a natural object. In terms of what we see at 𝗬𝗟𝗏, this is typically going to be clouds and heavenly objects such as the sun and Nibiru. Therefore, the important thing to remember is that digital cameras such as the outdoor surveillance camera at 𝗬𝗟𝗏 can produce images with both natural objects as well as camera aberrations. So the trick becomes one of separating the real objects from the aberrations. And if you have a series of images, this can be done very easily with movement. Here we have a series of observation images recently submitted to us, which turned out to be an excellent example of a lens flare, and how it can be identified because of its random movements. That's why I call lens flares hoochie coochie dancers, because they just dance around everywhere. In our video titled Planet X System Observations and Orbital Analysis, published on July 28, 2013, we presented a superb example of how Nibiru moves naturally through the sky. Here you see to the left of the sun is Nibiru, or what we used to call bluebonnet. Notice how it moves steadily through the sky as natural objects do, while it closes with the cloud bank. Now remember, all camera aberrations happen within a few inches of the imaging sensor in the camera, which is installed just behind the lens mount. And what you see now is Nibiru slipping behind the clouds. It is also very important to note that Nibiru disappears behind the clouds while the sun is still in full view. Had it been an aberration, it would have remained in view with the sun. Obviously, the advantage of using a consecutive series of images to determine if your object of interest is natural or not is the best way to go. Yet in most cases, we only have one image to work with, or just a limited series. In this case, we at 𝗬𝗟𝗏 have developed an analysis method for studying just these kinds of digital images. We first explained a key element of a method we call camera sensor illumination, or CSI, in a video we released on April 19, 2013, titled Blue Kachina and Its Moon. Unlike film, which is a single substrate, digital image sensors are like a tiled wall, all contributing to a single image. Consequently, we found that natural objects that generate their own light will also cause what we call foreground illumination of the atmosphere in front of them, inside the image sensors that captured their presence. This became the basis for a complete camera sensor illumination method we presented on July 28, 2013 in our video titled Planet X System Observations and Orbital Analysis. In that video, we show two attributes of natural objects when imaged with digital cameras. First, they evidence foreground illumination, and second, they offer crisp, well-defined image details. Consequently, we refer to them as hot objects. Aberrations, on the other hand, we refer to as cold objects because they lack foreground illumination and evidence fuzzy edges. In reviewing our images of Nibiru captured with the 𝗬𝗟𝗏 surveillance cameras, we have always seen a consistent pattern of hot objects. Likewise, Nibiru moves in a natural manner in these feed captures. And as you saw before, it slipped behind a cloud bank at sunset while the sun was still in full view. So, are we asking you to believe that the images we have been reporting for all this time are in fact Nibiru? No. What we are asking you to do is to be a good cynic. If you are new to this topic, you're no doubt wondering how much time you will need to invest to gain a mastery of it. Unfortunately, with so much disinformation out there to sort through, it can take as much as 3 years to gain a satisfying mastery of the topic. This is why we created the Planet X 101 series. The first 4 episodes in this series literally compress 3 years of independent study into just 3 hours of instruction. Complete these 4 episodes and you will have a satisfying mastery of the topic. Who, what, when, where, why, and how is the best place to start, because it is designed to give you a solid foundation upon which you can build from. From there, Deep Impact shows you the most immediate concern with a Planet X system flyby, namely a deep impact event that will devastate coastal cities with a massive wall of water, such as that depicted in the movie Deep Impact. Then you'll be ready for Nibiru nearing. This is the episode that prompted the United States government to render the surveillance camera feed at Turrialba useless for the purpose of observing Nibiru. And then you'll be ready for the next video, Pole Shift, and the big what if question. How will it happen? Also in this video, you'll see documented proof that our government has in fact admitted to the existence of Planet X and that we live in a binary star system. Once you've completed this series of instruction, you'll be ready to take action. If you're ready to become a part of the solution, visit Yowza.com, that's YOWUSA.com, and read It's Time to Look Up. In that article, we ask you to begin looking up at the sky, and we show you how to make a verifiable observation report. The rules are simple. You must make a naked eye observation, sending us a picture your friend took, or something that you found after looking at an image you had captured with your camera is of no value to us. Next, send us the raw image file from the camera, and please note, it needs to have a minimum resolution of 8 megapixels in order for us to conduct a proper camera sensor illumination analysis. And most importantly, you must come forward. We do not publish anonymous reports. You must give us a telephonic interview to explain what you have observed, and then give us your permission to publish that interview along with your real name and the city or general location in which you made the observation. So if you feel that you've seen Nibiru in the sky, contact us at info@yowza.com with your report. And remember, you must look before sunset and to the west. And I'll leave it on that note. So until the next time we meet, remember Marshall's motto: destiny comes to those who listen and fate finds the rest. So learn what you can learn, do what you